Han Park, the CEO and co-founder of Payment Labs. Welcome to the Sport Businessman Podcast. It is an honor to be hosting you today.
Well, thank you for having me. Really excited to talk about the world of sports and fintech with you today.
So you're building Payment Labs, a global fintech startup that's revolutionizing how payments are handled across sports, esports, and creator-driven industries. And according to FinTech Global, we read that Payment Labs has processed over $50 million in payments for notable clients and recently closed a 3.25 million seed round led by Aperture Venture Capital. Therefore, can you introduce us how your career in sports media and entertainment started, and where did the solution to bring Payment Labs to life begin?
Yeah, thanks for asking. And yes, we just closed our first institutional round, but we've actually been around the past 5 years, bootstrapping, really figuring out the solution. And so it comes actually from my background where I've been a serial entrepreneur in the video game space on the competitive video game side of it, which what we know now as the esports industry. I was a co-investor and an executive of probably the largest independent esports company, and probably the only unicorn exit to date, a company called ESL Gaming, which ultimately now is EFG. I ran the US operations, well, the North American operations, working with 60 different developers and publishers, essentially doing esports competitions. And for us, we looked at esports always as a form of sports entertainment. It was competitors that were very highly skilled. It's just that they were doing it on a digital playfield, right? The essence of sports was there. It's about the highest level of competitions with fans watching, the highest level of performance within these games, and uh, essentially broadcasting this out to that audience that were rapidly consuming this type of content. And so, where we saw the problem, and that I personally dealt with while we were running, on behalf of 60 different developers and publishers, their esports programs, was that oftentimes prize money was correlated with the quality of event. And what I mean by that is the larger the prize pools are, the higher performing gamers would compete, and the teams and the organizations, but also the broadcast reach, right? The resources of production and the quality of the content itself was, I would say, equated with the amount of prize money announced. So it drew a lot more audience when you announced $1 million prize pool for a certain game. And so coming out of that, what the biggest challenge that we had was we would spend months and years planning for this world championship event at the highest level for broadcast. But then after the excitement and the event was done well and the energy of the participants and the winners holding up that $1 million check, the work actually started of paying these individuals and these gamers and athletes after the event was done, because now you go, okay, we have to give out $1 million of prize pool, but there were 1,000 participants along the way that won some form of cash prize as part of that prize pool. And so we had to deal with paying out all the different gamers and athletes after the event. And that's where the complexity of payments came in, because you have to deal with not only taxes, but cross-border payments. A lot of these people were competing in tournaments that were organized by companies out of the US or Europe that were operating with US dollars or euros, but these gamers could win from anywhere in the world. And so you have to pay them out in the currencies and the payment methods that they can actually accept. And that's where the complications and the friction of payments come in the world of competition.
And why was it specifically um, needed the birth of a SaaS tech product instead of a financial service firm?
So there's a lot of different platforms and financial institutions like your bank that can facilitate payments, but they don't understand the nuances on a holistic level, the logistics around the payments. with each payment that you're making, there's a reason, there's a use case to it. Like, why are you paying this individual, right? That oftentimes have to pass regulatory compliance, meaning your biggest banks in the world that handle global transactions do not understand the world of esports, that gamers, 18-year-olds, could enter into a video game competition and win $100,000 from this international organizer. So oftentimes compliance is the part that holds up a lot of these cross-border type payments. And then on top of the compliance and regulatory requirements around financial transactions, you also have tax requirements because these are in some countries and some jurisdictions, uh, prize winnings are considered taxable income, which have to be reported to the tax authorities. So there has to be clean audit trails and reporting of taxes on these type of payments. And so there's a lot behind the scenes of athletes winning prize money that the general fan doesn't understand why these athletes are not getting paid fast because there's a lot of things that you have to deal with the logistics side of it. So going back to your question, yeah, there's a lot of companies and your banks can do the payments themselves, but they don't support the compliance and tax aspects of it and the logistics of support to make sure that these payments get to the athletes in the method that they can actually receive it and as fast as they can receive it. And that's what we streamline and automate.
And when you started testing for payment labs, what was the customer journey that you had in mind for these clients that are athletes that have to get paid immediately? And what is their journey today? And what has been the feedback and from your that you've received?
Yeah, that's a good question. And so the journey actually started in solving a video game esports problem, where I would say we had the probably the most extreme edge cases of payments. And the reason why is like I mentioned, esports was global in nature. Anyone from anywhere in the world can compete as long as they were highly skilled, win some sort of prize money in competition. And then the gamers, their demographic tended to be a lot younger, right? So 16 to 25-year-olds that are playing the game that they love, but at the highest, professional level to win this type of prize money. And so when you mix those two, you got oftentimes young gamers that were often unbanked or didn't know what onboarding means to get paid. All they concerned about is that they perform really well and that they won some competition, and then they go on social media, to say, "Where's my money?" They don't understand there's an actual process to receive their money. And so that helped us kind of figure out like what type of infrastructure and global network of partners that we need to be partnered with and enable through our software to make sure that we have the most accessible routes for them. So we have the ability to pay because of our gaming background, 150 different currencies in over 180 countries, as long as they're not on some sanction list or the countries are not at war or anything that holds up financial regulatory requirements on a global level. We have the ability to pay that individual regardless of where they're coming from. And so that was solving an esports problem, and that's what we spent the 2 years optimizing. So our first customers were your largest game publishers that ran big esports programs with big prize money, or large tournament organizers that were being sponsored by different brands and sponsors, organizing these multi-million dollar type competitions. So that's where we started by solving the problems that they were encountering when they were having to pay out thousands of gamers all over the world. Then came the lockdown and the pandemic, right, where the world shut down. Sports pretty much didn't happen, but gaming went on. So it allowed us to kind of retool and optimize how we do this for gamers. And then coming out of the global lockdown, right? Sports came back in a major way because people wanted to connect with each other, and sports is the perfect medium to do that because people either watch sports again together or they started playing it. So you started seeing a lot of emerging sports leagues and alternative sports leagues take on. And then because of the way that payments had to modernize after the lockdown, there was no more checks. no more physical cash, right? Everything moved to digital payments. So all these great emerging and alternative sports leagues, we're starting to look at, okay, we have to work in the world of digital payments, but can we do this on our own? How many people, how many partners do we have to integrate with? And we came and said we could do this in one holistic solution because we do this for the world of gaming. And so for the past 2 years, most of our customers, new customers that are signing on, are actually emerging in alternative sports leagues that are looking to modernize and take advantage of digital payments on a global level. And it makes complete sense because their growth and scaling is essentially tied to the success of the popularity of the fan base behind these passion sports. And so we want to enable that scale and growth by providing them an infrastructure where we're turnkey, it's holistic, we take care of all the friction and headaches that normally they would encounter with if they were trying to do it on their own.
And so, Han, talking about this infrastructure and the tools that you've implemented today to build payment labs, flash forward to August, end of August 2025, it was announced about your 3.25 million seed round capital raise. Um, what was your strategic advantage in this industry and sector to build payment labs? Did you know you had first mover advantage? Was there a competition already? Where did you take the inspiration from, other than the problem that you noticed, to build this solution to give the audience of an idea of what makes it an investable product, and also the roadmap for expansion of the customers?
Yeah. So what's really driving our growth and why we believe this is a massive opportunity is if you look back to how Stripe emerged, in the world of e-commerce, right? They revolutionized how you can take pay-ins for the world of e-commerce. And that was something that was needed at the time where e-commerce companies can go and easily get onto a payment processor, right? And take in payments to build their core businesses. We're seeing the similar approach here in the world of sports because of the fact the push for modernization. The legacy of way of doing payments in the past, 20 to 50 years, and all sports leagues deal with this because the flow of funds within sports operations is very important. You collect revenues from your fans and your members to fund the operations that ultimately need to be paid out to everyone from athletes to your event staff, the referees, and even talent now, right? That's being contracted out to promote the league and such. And so the payment flow is always been there with sports, but this push for modernization, digital payments to make things faster and more scalable is now technology based. It has to work on the software. The legacy of way of doing manual operations in banking has been modernized now because of API enablement by a lot of these legacy institutions that can, offer different payment methods, make global payments faster, and all these things. But then if you don't understand how to develop that partnership and integrate properly with those the I would say the global financial partners, it's a big project for a lot of these sports organizations. Even the major league sports organizations are dealing with this now. And so where we come in and what we solve is that we've already done this because we understand the world of sports, right? Going back to it was purposely built and vertically focused. So what we see is the next 24 months is that the world of sports is going to go through a major modernization push because fintech solutions enable all the things that were highly inefficient before, which were manual process of collecting data, collecting forms, collecting and sending out payments, can all be automated and streamlined through software. In addition, things like support and taxes, which you have to do separately outside of the payments, can now be integrated into that. What are we actually doing? We're essentially providing fintech-based solutions to non-fintech customers to streamline their operations and to cut costs and to allow them to grow their leagues and their sport faster than they had previously been able to without spending a lot of cost and resources in building these teams and hiring more people internally.
And so now you're serving emerging sports leagues like the Snow League, X. But why are they your ideal customers? And also, what does your outlook for the next 5, 10 years of Payment Labs look like? Are you going to enter college sports, the revenue
Yep.
stream? Could you kindly brief us on that?
Yeah, so we looked at the world of sports as kind of our adjacent vertical to what we had built for the world of esports. But the world of sports, the TAM and the serviceable addressable market, right, is actually bigger because, like I mentioned, coming out of the world lockdowns and sports being where it's at today, it's the biggest form of entertainment where people can connect with each other, right, by watching sports together, playing sports together. The rise of pickleball and paddle, right? That came out of the lockdowns because people can now participate and compete with each other in an active sport that they can adopt very quickly. And so the growth of those type of emerging sports leagues is really attractive. And so what we do for them is that instead of focusing on building your organization internally to deal with the complexities of payments and financial operations, we're saying let us be your partner, handle that piece of it so you can focus on the growth of your sport. So hire more people to marketing and sales and membership management and all the things that you need to have a successful sports organization, and let us deal with the financial operations, the compliance aspect, the tax requirements. So what that does for sports leagues, especially emerging and alternative sports leagues, is that they have enterprise level solutions, security, data, everything that they would normally require as major league sports where we can scale with their growth. And so we come in early, essentially solve a lot of the friction that they're going to be seeing in the next 2, 3 years as they continue to grow. We eliminate that by in the beginning by partnering with them and saying we already have the solution in place. And so as you continue to grow, this is one area of your operations, the financial operations, that is going to be efficient and you can streamline your growth too. Example is if you're a sport that started out regionally in one country, but now it's getting popularity and you're expanding on a global broader base and you're getting international participation, well, yeah, we've already covered the international capabilities of payments. And so you can do your next event in a different country with different athletes. That's what the enablement of scaling and growth can do when we work with emerging sports leagues like that. So where do I see all this happening? Well, the world of sports is going through this transformation, right? And it's not just at the major league sports and global sports league level, but it's also your pro-am where I see a lot of the alternative and emerging sports leagues coming up and establishing themselves. But collegiate sports is going through a big change right now where student athletes, while they're studying for and at the university, can now monetize their name, image, and likeness. But not only that, they're getting a share of the revenues from the media dollars that are often being usually held at the conference or university levels. They're getting a piece of that. So that what if you distill all that down, it's a lot of payments to student athletes that are not your employees, they're your contractors for the time being while they're there. So that's a lot of payments that aren't part of a traditional payment system that the universities and these different platforms and agencies and even the conferences and the collectives have to pay out. And we want to be that infrastructure to enable that. But the segment that actually is, I think, probably the biggest is youth sports. It's highly fragmented. There's so many payment challenges, right? Any parent of an active, child will tell you that they're probably on 4 or 5 different platforms to manage their children's activities, on top of paying into the system constantly for equipment fees, travel fees, participation fees. So there's a lot of payments that are highly fragmented that we want to own a piece of by providing the right solution for the world of sports, especially how the payment flows and the nuances work within youth sports. So we're best positioned for this because we focus on the world of sports.
Absolutely. I mean, youth sports is a $70 billion industry. And it's not just the kids and the parents, but it's also the fees that go into the referees because
Yep.
they're paid from the pockets of the parents. And so
Yep.
it's such an interesting it's such an interesting model and time to be in the industry. And so you're looking at solutions, you're looking at providing this solution in youth sports. Are you already involved in youth sports, or it's a future outlook?
It's a future outlook. So I was trying to give you an idea of our roadmap going, in the next 5 years, right? Right now, it's mostly your professional and emerging sports leagues that we're actively engaged with, that we've signed and in discussions with to help with the payment infrastructure that these organizations need. Um, but we've also spoke with 60 different universities and the major conferences being the payments infrastructure provider for the collegiate space. And then the youth sports conversations are just starting now. We're doing the research to understand where is that friction, what are the challenges that youth sports organizations are facing, and can we provide the solution with what we've built to date, uh, but also what features and functionality do they need to even make it more streamlined, more efficient, more catered towards their industries. And so for the next 5 years, we're diving into the world of sports, solving every payment challenge. We want to be, like I mentioned, what Stripe is for e-commerce, Payment Labs is for the world of sports when it comes to payments. We want to be able to facilitate any type of payment challenge that sports organizations face, whether you come from esports or sports or even content creation that touches the world of sports, especially now that student athletes are some of your biggest content creators because of their fan base and the following they have from the performance on the field, right? And so there's a lot of adjacent opportunities that we're developing. Biggest reason why we did this first institutional round, in August, was because as a new startup and a new fintech, not very many people know that we have the right solution for what they've been looking for, or understand that we can address the operational inefficiencies that they have. So we raised the money to really establish our name, our brand, and to start the communications with every major sports organization that are looking for this type of solution and platform right now.
Then hand,
It's all
thank
about
you.
content distribution.
Then, Han, thank you so much for joining us on the Sport Businessman podcast. Again, it was an honor to be hosting you. There's many episodes and interviews and media content to learn what Han is building with Payment Labs. But I find that our interview today has been so useful to understand what Payment Labs is building, where the background comes from, what is the investable product, and also the future outlook, and where the biggest opportunities today are for payment solutions. Thank you, Han.
Thank you. Thank you very much.